Welcome to the next CFO with Ted Bartlett and myself, your host, Matthew Sledge. We're going to jump into some rapid fire questions just to get things started. So, Ted, what's your favorite hobby?
Golfing poorly.
All right. Who's your favorite musician?
Um, Wu-Tang Clan.
Oh, man, Cream. That's great. I love that. I want to know if you have a purple cassette later, too. Who is your favorite sports team? I know you have a few, so I want to know who the best is.
Denver Broncos.
Okay, there you go. What's your favorite thing to do after work to unwind after you play a bad round of golf?
Mainly when I'm not working or doing something like that, I'm at home. I have a 6-year-old daughter, just hanging out with my 6-year-old.
That's awesome. Just a couple more of these. Favorite musician?
You already went there, right?
Oh,
Wu-Tang
already did
Clan.
Wu-Tang.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Favorite color?
Green.
All right. Favorite family member? You don't have to answer that one. You don't have
My
to answer
daughter.
that
Gotta
one.
be my daughter.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
We won't show this to your wife then. That's
Yeah.
or anyone else in the family.
She
We'll just
she
show it
she
to the
would she
daughter.
would say the same thing. She would
That's awesome.
pick my daughter too. So, yep,
That's good. Sounds like your daughter's a winner. So
yep.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Ted, it's great to have you here on the next CFO. And let's go ahead and kick off the episode. So, Ted, we're going to talk about a lot of things, but why don't you give us a little introduction to who you are, where you're at right now, and what you're currently doing?
Yeah, Ted Bartlett. I'm based in the Phoenix area, and I'm CFO at Vermeer Mountain West. And what we are is kind of akin to what a Ford dealer is to Ford. We are dealers of industrial construction equipment, things along the lines of trenchers, chippers, horizontal directional drills, grinders, things like that, big equipment with specialty applications in landscaping, construction, fiber optics, things like that. We operate 13 locations from El Paso to Anchorage, but our biggest market is Phoenix, and our headquarters is in Phoenix area.
Yeah, and I'll butcher it, but the horizontal drillers was a new one to me, but I educated myself. That was quite interesting. So to our audience, definitely go out and check it. It's an interesting industry and market that Ted's in. So,
Yeah, we're running fiber optics internet to every house in the United States, which is
oh
a
wow,
big thing, and our drills are doing a lot of that work.
that's awesome. That's awesome. I have a buddy that works with Hubble. I need to touch base with him on if he knows y'all and what you do.
Yeah.
So first off, I got to congratulate you. Ted has been named a finalist in FEI's CFO of the Year. And so I just got to ask, what does this recognition mean to you personally? And is there a particular accomplishment or challenge that you really think led to this deserving recognition?
It's an honor to be thought of in this way and to be recognized in this way, right? The event is actually tomorrow night, where we'll find out who won and this sort of thing, right? I don't think about it too much in terms of individual accomplishment. I think about it in terms of what my team does every day that helps me to look like I know what I'm doing, and think about it in terms of what 235 people at Vermeer Mountain West do every day, because you don't have a business, you don't have a need for a CFO and the kind of stuff we do in finance, right? Nobody's running a accounts payable, accounts receivable, financial planning and analysis business. Only ones that are supporting other companies, right? But
Yeah.
around the business that we run, the business is doing the thing, and we're kind of supporting it with what we're doing.
That's awesome. Well, there's just a couple of results that'll be coming out in the next couple of days, but that will be the top one on my mind. You touched on how important your team is, and I just want to touch on that while we're on it. What do you really look for in a team? How important is the team to you, and how do they elevate you?
Yeah, so I always say I try to find the smartest person I can that fits in
Yeah,
whenever I'm trying to make a hire. And for us, fitting in is like you're a decent person to work with. You have a team spirit. You do things to help each other to be successful. You're kind of freely giving of yourself. These are all the kind of things we look for. We never want to hire a narcissist into our team.
sure.
Have some ways to try to screen those people out that are pretty successful that I've shared with the rest of the company, actually, because I don't want them working anywhere in this business.
Yeah,
Team's very important to me. because as a manager and later as a manager of managers, what that really is getting the most out of a lot of people and making a lot of stuff possible that you couldn't do by yourself.
Sure.
So as good as any leader may be, if they've got 15 people on their team, no one person can do what 15 people best deployed, maximizing their ability can do. It's just not possible. So that's got to be the first thing always, is to try to enable and empower the team members to do the best they can do, the most they can do.
And we'll get into some recommendations along the way. And I think those are all really important skills and things to keep in mind for the professionals out there that might be watching this. But, I think in accounting and finance specifically, there's so many hard skills that people can learn and really master, and that's what people get focused on. Are there any particular soft skills that you would recommend, methods that the professionals out there could go try and hone if they don't come naturally to them, the way learning all the financial regulatory journal entry sort of stuff may?
Mm-hmm. So I'll share this with you. A young accounting person asked me recently, how do I become a CFO? And I said, I'll just kind of tell you what my formula is. I'm a good storyteller, good writer, good public speaker, good enough at accounting. The technical hard stuff is important and you have to have it, but it's kind of table stakes. And a lot of people have it. A lot of people know the codification better than me, or the tax regulations. Certainly, I'm not a tax person. Know a lot of that stuff better than I do. Being a CFO is a relationship job. You got to have the relationships with the banks, the insurance companies, the different stakeholders, the different other leadership team members in the company. So getting comfortable with building relationships with people is extremely important. I'm a little bit of an unusual CFO, that I'm an extrovert. I like to walk into a room with 100 people I don't know and kind of make the rounds.
That's probably how we met,
I believe it had to do with that, right? There was some truth to that. So I like to do that sort of thing, and it's a little bit of a cheat code. But you don't have to be an extrovert to be a CFO. You just have to get comfortable with having conversations, thinking on your feet, kind of having conversations with people and that accomplish what you need to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of transitions directly into a quote that you had recently in an interview with AZ Big Media. And I'll try and make the transition smooth. But you said it's always challenging to take complex things and make them simple. But you feel like that's a place that you're able to really serve people well. And so can you talk a little bit about how that communication you were just talking about aids you in your ability to do that, and how that really empowers you to be a partner to the other areas of business beyond just providing numbers and giving checklists of income statements and balance sheets?
Sure. There's a thing I think about all the time called the typical mind fallacy. And what that is the human tendency to think that everybody else thinks the same way that we do. That I am normal, so when I say something that makes sense to me, of course it makes sense to everybody. You've got to kind of always try to avoid falling prey to that, I think, and I think about it literally every day. So when I talk about something, I don't present it necessarily in a way that would be most digestible to myself. I try to think about, and I try to observe all the time how people digest what I say, and I'm always trying to refine my approach to talking about things that I feel like meets either the specific person I'm talking to, or if I'm talking to a lot of people all at once, that I feel like will meet the needs of the broadest cross-section of those people. It is a highly iterative process. And one thing is, like, I'm always kind of watching for nonverbal cues of somebody, if their eyes are glazing over or something and they're just not following what I'm talking about. A lot of times people don't like to say, I don't understand what you're talking about. So I always try to watch for that and do the best I can to sense that and know that and to try to change it up. One thing that's kind of funny is I'm more of a verbal person than a math person. When I took the GMAT to go to grad school, I scored very high on verbal and quite low for business school on math. And I'm an accountant for a living, right? I'm good enough, like I said. But I believe that kind of good financial analysis is taking words. People describe something to you that happened. You got to take the words, turn it into a number, and then you got to take the numbers and turn it into words. And you got to kind of make it translate in a way that makes sense between the two sort of modes of information transfer, right? And I think that's a great way to think about it to be successful as a CFO.
That's awesome. I think that's great advice because that's probably what helped elevate you above maybe some of your peers to get that shot at CFO that the leaders, like the other CEOs, maybe the other executives thought, he knows enough of the accounting and finance that we need, but we can communicate and partner with him and, go through different strategy ideas with him easily and communicate in that way. Do you think that really played a role in how you got your first shot at a CFO?
I do. The other thing I did is I took a break from accounting for a few years, and I did kind of a corporate
Okay.
development role, doing M&A, buying a few businesses, and then I got sent to
Yeah.
be the general manager of two of those businesses for a couple of years. Um, and that sort of gave me a breadth of experience in marketing and kind of general management operations, things like that.
Hmm.
I didn't go do that forever, but after circling
Yeah.
back to finance and accounting, I had a broader sense of business, I would say, and I
Hmm.
would recommend it for finance and accounting people who may get an opportunity to do that. It served me well, and it's a good idea.
That's awesome. And kind of backing up before that, you've had a very impressive career covering, like you said, finance, accounting, operations, and then general management, like you just said, and industries from ag to tech to defense. Uh, I know you said you've kind of emphasized this non-traditional path and making sure you're well-rounded, but looking back, was there a pivotal moment or project or event that solidified that finance was the right path for you? How did you end up in accounting and finance initially?
I went to college late. I was 25 when I went back to college for real because I was in the Navy for 4 years, and then I
Yeah.
screwed around and did sales for a couple of years after that. And then I finally got serious, went back to school, and I just sort of happened into it. I kind of liked finance classes, and I just happened into it a little bit as an undergrad, but I've always been not specifically only an accounting and finance minded person. I really kind of wanted to find a way to lead business, and that was just kind of the path I took to it.
Sure.
Um, yeah.
Nice, nice. In touching on that, along that career that you took, accounting and finance, you've become a certified professional controller, which is, I think, less common that I've seen, and then a CPA as well. What roles have certifications played in that progression and helping you navigate your career through different industries? And what made you decide, in particular, the CPC designation? What made you decide to go that path?
I don't even know if that even exists anymore, to tell you the truth. So
Okay, I'd never
that
heard of it.
certification, there was a thing called the Institute of Financial Management, something to that effect, and this was like 10,
Yeah.
11 years ago. And I signed up for a seminar. It was a couple days, and then at the end of it, you could take a test, and if you passed it, you're a certified professional controller. The guy who was in charge of that organization, funny thing, we met at the CFO Leadership Council event in Dallas several weeks ago. That guy now works for the CFO Leadership Council. The
Okay.
same guy. So I think the organization I got that designation from is probably defunct, but it was a thing at a point in
Okay.
time. The CPA was important in my
Sure.
career. So when I took my big jump in my career, I took a big controller job, and it was the requirement for the job was either an MBA or CPA. And at the
Hmm.
time, I had the MBA, and I had passed two sections of the CPA, and I actually took the third section the day before I went to interview for that job, and I found out I passed it after I got the job.
Awesome.
I became a CPA later. I was reading recently, CFOs, something like 38% of them have CPAs. You don't have to be a CPA to be a CFO, but I would say 10 years ago, it was a bit more of an expectation for it
Yeah.
than maybe it is now. Um, so I never worked in public accounting, right? I never audited, I never did tax. I've been an industry guy for my whole career,
Hmm.
but I feel like it conveys a credibility that
Yeah.
has just kind of been helpful, right, as I've moved through my career.
Yeah. Especially without that public experience, I can only imagine that it automatically gives you credibility walking into the room that maybe you wouldn't otherwise just endear from maybe some people that had that public experience, especially with big fours and things like that.
Sure.
So yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that much about your career and path and where you go. And so, you know, also, I'm just curious, were there any mentors along the way, any CEOs or professors or anybody like that that really helped guide you or gave you some really great wisdom along the way to guide the path you ended up on.
Yeah, so a number of good people throughout the years, right?
Hmm.
I sort of made my big career move when I worked for Xerox in
Okay.
2008, 9, and I kind of strategically took on a project that the guy who was my boss at the time was failing at. It was a software implementation. He was
Okay.
failing at it. He was just kind of struggling in his life generally and just having a hard time getting this thing done. And I asked for the job because I knew it was high visibility and I knew it was gonna, there's a non-zero chance of screwing it up, right? But I knew if I
Yeah.
succeeded at it, it would launch me, it would give me visibility within the company. And I ended up doing a presentation for about 500 people in the business about this software, kind of training them how to use it, what was going to be different, how it was going to work, this kind of thing. And I just did really well at it.
Nice.
And the next week, that was a pivotal moment in my career. This is 2009, and the next week I started getting invited to lunch by people who were not finance and accounting people. They were business people, program management types, right?
Yeah.
We were doing learning and development for Ernst& Young was our primary client at the time.
Hmm.
So people from the E&Y side of things that had connections that were just older than me and just kind of had a lot of good experience really took me under their wing.
Yeah.
Um, Taught me a lot about how to navigate a company like that, be very successful in it over the course of a few years. And there's still people I keep in touch with, right? Anytime
Yeah.
I've needed to give references for a job, there's a lady, Tracy Baker, who was one of them, who's back at E&Y actually now, who I
Okay.
always give her name as a reference because she was a key mentor to me at that time. And I have
Yeah.
confidence she's always going to say nice stuff about me, right? So,
Yeah.
yep.
Those are
But a
those
number
are
of people,
pivotal people to
yeah,
have. Go ahead.
yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, a number of people from that era were important mentors to me, and just I've had others, right? I had a CFO I worked for at Gowan Company who I would say, didn't go out of her way to teach me anything specifically like some mentors do, but she just kind of expected me to do a good job as the controller. But I learned a lot by watching how she worked and how she managed things and kind of her thought process and her flow of things. And I took a lot from that, right? Even though there was not as much direct effort to mentor me, right? There's opportunities to learn from people, even in situations kind of like what I'm talking about. She wasn't trying to withhold anything, but she was just hoping I would do a good job as a controller and kind of help her do what she needed to do as a CFO of a
Yeah.
global company, right?
Yeah.
But I was able to learn a lot from her as well from that experience.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think if I were to take anything, uh, one piece from what you just said away that I think should be really on the minds of aspiring CFOs that might be listening to this is, look for the opportunity. Even if someone's not mentoring you or teaching you, or even if your responsibilities now aren't giving you the visibility, looking for those opportunities, whether it's trying to take on that project like you did with the implementation, or just observing the CFO and always trying to learn. I think always learning, even after you get your CPA, even if you after you get to that next position, continual learning is really crucial to reaching the next stage in your career you want to. So, um,
Yes, absolutely.
yeah, nice. Uh, back to Vermeer and where you are now, y'all have grown really quickly. Y'all, if I understand correctly, y'all have nearly tripled your team in just 2 years, or the company as a whole in just 2 years. So, what tactics have you used to really keep managing financial operations running smoothly during this high growth rate?
I would say be trying to hire the best people we can. So almost my whole team came after me. So
Mm,
essentially, what happened is Vermeer Southwest acquired Vermeer Rocky Mountain, which was two separate dealer groups, and we kind of
hmm.
doubled overnight. And they hired me. They didn't have a CFO in place before me. The CEO kind of was also the CFO, is what it amounted to. He's from a finance
Okay.
background.
Yeah.
So I came in to lead on that, and then they said kind of hire your team. So through going 150 miles an hour, through implementing, integrating, changing a system, doing a lot of stuff around having an acquisition, I had to train up a team in accounting. So there's some patience, but there's also some kind of consistent high expectations that need to be
Sure.
conveyed. So that's a little bit of a deft balance, right? To expect a lot but to also understand that sometimes we're going to miss, sometimes we're going to
Yeah.
have growing pains, right? And to be kind of patient through it. So from a personnel standpoint, it's been a lot of that for a couple of years. The last acquisition we did was in December of 22, and there's nothing currently on the horizon in that way. So that has allowed us to kind of slow down, solidify things, get standards and practices in place in ways that when you're going as fast as we were going, it's hard to do. I would say from a CFO standpoint broadly, the hard thing about growth like that they don't necessarily teach you in business school is working capital is strained. Just everything is strained when you're growing over 20% a year.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh my God, the inventory is exploding. There's so much more AR. We wake up one day, there's $20 million in AR. And it's like we're used to half that. So how are we going to collect all this? How are we going to manage all this? It's just a lot of that. Do we have the right financing in place? Do we need to rethink capital structure? Right? It's a lot of this kind of stuff when you're growing. Literally we had 22% compound annual growth rate for 4 years. It's a lot to manage.
That's intense. Yeah, but we've joked on the next CFO crew, researching you and getting to know you, Ted, that we think your nickname may be the fixer amongst our group. That you're brought in to handle things just like this. So we're sure you've achieved success and will continue to achieve success. So I hope that's a moniker we can bestow upon you.
Well, thanks for that. I would say there's not been any particular intentionality about it, but as I've moved between roles over the last 10, 12 years, I just kind of keep finding myself in roles where there's a big jump going from kind of a smaller private company kind of feel to more of a larger, more robust company where there's a need for professionalization. There's a need for the establishment of controls, processes, this kind of thing. And I've just kind of repeatedly found myself in those kind of roles. So it's not so much of a fixer per se, but a professionalizer, I guess.
Okay, there you go. There you go. We'll call you the professional. That sounds great.
in the growth path of any company, right? The trajectory of it, every company goes through that where like QuickBooks isn't good enough anymore, so you need a more robust system, right? You used to have the same person doing AP and AR, it's bad control, bad segregation of duties.
Sure.
We're moving away from those kind of things. I just kind of repeatedly find myself in those spots, which is cool. It's a little bit of a niche, I guess.
That's awesome. One final question on that topic before we kind of move into the back half of things, or kind of the closing area of things. When you go through growth like that, a lot of times you'll be at a company that has really good culture, real great family feel, and then rapid growth and expansion. You can't operate all those ways like you previously did, kind of how you pointed out. You can't have AR and AP at the same person, things of that nature. Are there any tips or tricks or practices that you really try to implement in your teams to still, ensure that team feel and that personal level of management is ensured, that people don't get disenchanted with that growth as you go beyond just getting the structure of the accounting and financial operations right?
Yeah, so I would say it hasn't been that hard in the accounting and finance group, the IT group that I oversee. It's relatively fewer people. The harder challenge with doing all these acquisitions, all these consolidation of the business, right, among different companies with different cultures, new people getting hired all the time. It's harder in that area. And I would say that I, as a matter of corporate leadership, as a matter of just my sense of responsibility for that, I participated a lot in going to the different locations, talking with people. We start with culture. We think about culture first at Vermeer Mountain West. That's kind of what everything flows from. And we think if it's not right, we're going to fail in a lot of ways. So it's not an afterthought. It's not the fifth thing we think about. It's the first thing we think about. For me, coming in, I'm the only member of the leadership team that is not a Vermeer person, right? I came in as kind of a natural outsider, which in finance is not a bad thing, right? You get some professional skepticism in place and experience seeing how things are done other ways that I can kind of bring to the table. But I found it very important to align intentionally and early on with the intentional culture of the company, and to be able to kind of bring that to convey that, right? To project that
Yeah.
forward to all the different people we meet, all the ones we hire. We've had it in our hiring processes, right? The way we screen people when we hire for like a parts person or a service technician or whatever.
Hmm.
We want alignment with the culture. One thing I found throughout my career, speaking to culture, is that when you do M&A, it's always about a third, a third, and a third. It's kind of an immutable law of nature, in my opinion. You find
Okay.
that when you acquire a business, a third of the people are just enthusiastic. They're probably the A players are the ones that just want to get on board and yeah, let's go, right?
Yeah.
There's a third of the people just for whatever reason they may be good employees in the old context, they're not going to fit in your context, and they will
Sure.
either make themselves go away or you'll need to make them go away, right? And then there's a
Hmm.
third of the people that could go either way or going to wait and see, and the early stage integration is super super important to that middle third. And if you do it well, you get them on board. You keep 2/3 of the people. The 1/3 that needed to go away, one way or another. And what you have
Yeah.
is a well integrated business. But I really believe, accounting people don't tend to think culture first, right? And
Yeah.
I would encourage people to think about culture first, because when you're doing these kind of things, it's going to inure to the benefit of the company massively if you get the cultural stuff right. The difference between a good integration and a bad integration is the culture fit, almost always.
Yeah. I love that you keep coming back to the people side of things and the personality side of things. And we may touch on a little bit more at the end. But just to give my own knowledge on that, I've seen some of the most brilliant accounting and financial minds, strictly from an equation knowledge standpoint, hit a glass ceiling because they don't have that personal side of things, the people side, the culture side, and they just didn't see the importance in it. They thought if they mastered the knowledge more and more, that would get them there, and they just couldn't see how they were running themselves into a wall doing that. So I love that you touch on that so much, and it being a key to success as a leader. Yeah,
It
awesome.
definitely is. Yep.
Yeah, great. Well, and you touched a lot in kind of what we've been discussing, the mergers and acquisitions, integrations, and growing company, about tech and things like that. Is there a particular innovation that you're excited about right now?
I'll tell you with AI, I go to a lot of CFO networking events, and what should we be thinking about AI in finance, right? And
Sure.
I don't.
I
Um,
didn't make you say AI here. I said
you
any
didn't
tech,
make me
man.
say AI, but
But
I will
it's the
say
thing on everybody's mind and mouth right now.
right. I've been kind of I have not wanted to be the early adopter, but I don't want to be the late adopter either, right?
Sure.
I want to kind of hit it at the right time when the bugs have been worked out and when it's clear kind of what the concerns are going to be and what the benefits are going to be. I want to kind of be current with it and hit it kind of like Goldilocks, right? Just right.
Yeah.
Um, at the CFO Leadership Council event that I was at with you a few weeks ago in Dallas, I sat at a random table for lunch, and these two ladies, Rachel Kersey and Julia Kozlov, just double barreled me about AI and how I'm missing the boat and how I need to get on it quickly. And they had a lot of good points.
Yeah.
And so as a result of that, a dialogue has occurred from that meeting with those two people. I'm going to join a call with them tomorrow and a bunch of other CFOs,
Awesome.
where they're going to kind of tell us what they know about it. We're going to have kind of a discussion about it. I came back here. The action I took away from Dallas was coming back here to Phoenix and having a meeting with various people who I know to be using it in some ways, and my IT manager talking about security and what should we be doing. And I have a team member who, kind of a business analyst type of person, who's going to be our futurist on AI a little bit,
Nice.
going forward. She's younger. She just graduated with a master's degree in data analytics last year,
Yeah.
and just kind of more native to it, I would say, than a
Hmm.
47-year-old guy like me that, you know, I didn't just
Looking
graduate
great,
last.
Ted. Yeah.
Yep. But we're
Yeah.
we're going to embrace it more than I meant to embrace it a month ago as a result of that conversation of that lunch table.
Sure. And I think that touches on a key point. And I think you're going about it right, but you can't just stick your head in the sand with it, for sure. And I think what we really advise people at Planful is, find a small piece you can start to integrate and keep your arms around it, keep the human in the loop, as we like to say. But then also, it's not going away. It's going to be integrated. And I think what's interesting to me is some of the different people I've talked to, the different ways it's penetrating every area of business, not just finance, accounting. I talked with, when I was at CFO LC, my co-presenter was working with a construction company, and they were using AI to survey construction lots and track supplies and things like that. So it's really making its way through. And then the last point that I think you're kind of catching on to as well is, the youth, the generations that are entering the workforce really see it as a tool and are going to judge their employers and the companies they're working with based off of how they are leveraging it and if they're leveraging it, because I think they're using it as an indicator of whether or not they feel like the company is going to stay up and competitive, because they know it's a technology they're going to leverage or need to leverage.
Yeah, I think that's a thought I've never had before you just said that.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's an interesting takeaway for me to ponder. And it makes me glad that we've started to engage with it a little bit more here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that hit me. I didn't think about it before. We had some interns at Planful this summer, and they were at some of the great colleges in the U.S., and they were just whizzes with it, and they are being taught it at their universities. So definitely keep that in mind and know that the talent that's going to be entering the workforce is going to be very much ready and willing to work with it. So, Ted, it's been a great conversation, and I know you're busy. I know we're getting towards the end of the year, the beginning of the month. You got to have a lot going on. But before we go, maybe it's on the people skills that we talked about, or some other soft skill. But is there any suggestion, any key piece of wisdom you would like to pass on or could pass on to any potential listeners that are aspiring to be future CFOs or just looking for that next step up and see it in accounting or finance?
Yeah. So I would tell you the best thing you can do is get out in the world and talk to people. Get off the couch, right? Put down the video game controller and go to some events and talk to some people. Just in the last year, this office I'm sitting in, we outgrew our headquarters. I met a real estate guy who turns out is a fraternity brother that I rented this office space from at an event at a guy's house in Paradise Valley, Arizona, right? Very nice house for an event I got invited to. I was also having trouble financing some real estate that I needed to close on by July. Couldn't get anybody to give me a loan in the post Silicon Valley Bank days.
Oh yeah.
A nighttime golf event. We have a golf course here in Tempe that has lights. And I went and played golf, and I met a guy, and he's like, "Oh, I'll do your deal." And it's literally, I went to these things with no expectation of anything happening. But if you put the energy into the world, you get out, you talk to people, you just never know when you might make some business out of it. You might do something to help your company, help yourself, meet a person who might give you your next job. So anybody I talk to, it doesn't come naturally to every accounting person, right? But
yeah,
just go to things, get out, find ways to get involved, talk to people, put effort forth with it, and have more to offer than what you seek. I think is really important.
Yeah.
When you do that, be willing to help other people, and just kind of the energy comes back to you, and you end up benefiting from it as well in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's you could end up at the guest on the next CFO with Matt Sledge as well, because that's how we met. We met at an event, and that's also what's spurring the AI leadership group you're meeting with as well. So great point. I really like how you brought that home, and I think our listeners have a lot to take from this conversation. So Ted, I thank you a lot for joining me today on the next CFO, and I wish you all the best and success at Vermeer and personally as well, man.
Thanks, Matt. I wish you and the Planful team and everybody success as well. I'm glad you invited me on this. This is my kind of conversation. I don't have much to tell people about debits and credits and stuff on something like this, but talk about people skills and talk about those kind of things. That's kind of right up my alley. That's what I like to talk about.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Well, Ted, thanks. And until next time.
Thanks so much.